to order. Could I have,
Director Baker,
I'm still here.
Director Burris, Director Case,
Here.
Director Foley,
Here.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Here.
Director Mormakunde,
He says he just parked.
oh,
He's on his way up.
Director Najib,
Here.
Director Owen Moore,
Here.
Director Pence.
Here.
Are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes.
Okay, and I understand we have no comments from the public. Okay. All right, may I have a motion for approval of minutes from our regular board meeting on January 28th and our board retreat on February 8th?
So move.
Thank you. I'll second. Okay. Any questions on either minutes? Okay. Voice vote, right?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. May I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda items? Second. Thank you. Okay, I have a motion by Director Burris and a second by Director Baker. Any questions on any of the consent agenda items, Director Baker?
Yeah, I have one question on the financial report, and I apologize. I had an earlier question I sent to staff, which they had resolved for me, and this is something else. But under salaries, where we look at full-time faculty, the numbers don't seem to correlate with my understanding of the percentage. And I was just hoping somebody could explain that to me.
The financial report?
Yeah, on the, it's attachment 4B. And it, full-time faculty shows we've used $29 million of a budget of 54 million, and it says that's 5%. So I just don't understand that. And hoping somebody can explain what that means. Do people see what I'm looking
Yes,
at?
yep.
Apologize, I do think that's a formula error.
Okay,
We can talk about
okay, cool. Thank you.
The numbers themselves are correct, it's just the percentage that's incorrect. Okay, perfect.
Okay, thanks. That was my only question.
Okay, any other questions or comments on any of the other consent agenda items? All right, and we can do a voice vote, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And then we have a resolution authorizing the sale of 1.5 million general obligation promissory notes. Justin. Hi.
Manager, point of order, we need a motion to have the discussion.
Yep.
So I'd be happy to move.
Thank you.
Action item 5A, resolution F0351-02-25, authorizing the sale of 1.5 million general obligation promissory notes series 2023-2024I, Milwaukee Area Technical College District, Wisconsin.
Give a second. Thank you. All right.
Good
Welcome.
evening, everyone. I am not Justin. Justin is preoccupied this evening. So he asked me to fill in. My name is Jordan Masnica. I do the same role as Justin throughout the state, primarily working with school district, and I work with other tech colleges throughout the state as well, including WCTC, just to the west of here. But I'm here because today we sold the note issue series 2425I for the college. I put a summary in front of each one of you. Let me know if you do not have one. But just going through that, very successful results for the college with this sale. You received 5 bids this morning. Loop Capital Markets was the winner with a true interest cost or an interest rate of 2.87%. So for reference, that is lower than any of your recent issuance. So it's good that we're trending down. Obviously, there's been a lot of volatility year to date with everything that's going on politically, everything that's going on with the economy. There's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty leads to volatility. But thankfully, for especially short-term interest rates, the rates have been going down year to date and over the last month since your last issuance as well. So the 2.87% is a fantastic interest rate, almost identical to that cover bid from Fidelity, just barely lower. Fidelity does win a lot of your debt issuance in recent history, so it's good to see them right there as well. But 5 bids, you can see they're very tight, so I think this is a really good competitive sale with a really good result. So going to the next page summarizes this debt issuance. It is 1.5 million, your normal monthly issuance for renovations. It will settle on March 13th, so that's when the college will receive the funds, and it will mature in 26 through 29. What is unique, you'll see here, it's a first interest payment of June 1st of 26. So we had actually set everything up for June 1st of 25, so this coming June. The platform that accepts the bids made a mistake when they inputted it, and they did it for 26 instead of 25. The good thing is that it has no effect on the overall performance of this or the repayment. It just delays that first interest payment, but you're still making the same payment. It's just slightly adjusted. And your financing plan is such that we can easily account for it within the financing plan. So really no harm at all, but that is something that is different from what you would normally see. You did maintain a rating with Moody's of AA1, obviously a fantastic rating, which leads to the fantastic results as well. The next page is that detailed financing plan, updated with the final numbers for Series I here. That structure on the far right is the same as what you'd all have seen. So it's just good to see that as we're updating it throughout the fiscal year, more debt is issued and finalized. Everything is still flowing as we had projected. And then, of course, as always, we included your most recent rating report as well. The usual highlights is the strong financial position, proactive management, and relatively low leverage. That's all I have. Any questions? Yes.
So it does mean, the fact that this is starting in 2026 does mean we're going to be making payments in a different fashion than we have. These are all short term and we can pay them off quickly, and so this means we'll be paying kind of twice as much next year because we'll have other.
Yeah, so it only affects the interest. So your principal repayment is still as we've been projected. So the actual outstanding debt will still be paid down as we had been projecting. It's just that first interest payment. And I think it's only a difference of roughly 50,000, but we can account for that on future issuance and how you're using your funds on hand as well. So that far right column, those total debt payments will remain unchanged, essentially the same structure.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure I understand that, but I'm gonna believe what you told me.
Yeah, so it's just
Maybe
changing when
next
you
year.
make that first interest, but we're gonna be able to adjust it with all the other variables in the financing plan. So you still have more issuance to go, so we can make some adjustments there. And in the financing plan, part of it is using funds on hand. So some fund balance that you have around.
Right.
So it's using less of it this year because you have less interest, 50,000 less, and then slightly more next year.
That I understood. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
Sorry.
were there, that's okay. No, that's all right. Were there any changes at all to the narrative from Moody's?
No.
Okay, any other questions from the directors on the line? Mark?
Yeah, I don't understand the explanation as to the error. So who is it that put the wrong date in?
So it's the platform that actually accepts the bids. It's called Parity. So it's the platform that almost all issuers use, or the vast majority use for competitive issuance. So we send them all of the documents that have all been reviewed, had all the correct information, and when they are inputting it into their system, they simply put year 26 instead of 25 for that first interest payment.
Okay, and if that had been caught before the time of the sale, would there have been an opportunity to correct it?
So the question was if that was caught before the issuance of the sale, would they have been able to correct it?
Yeah, yes, likely. I don't know what their rules are in terms of timing ahead of the sale or not. We did check with the top bidders and confirm with them that it wouldn't have changed their bid at all. So it didn't affect the outcome from an interest rate at all.
Okay. Mark, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I think we're good. Can I have a roll call vote?
Director Burst,
Aye.
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye.
Director Moore Mukunde,
Aye.
Director Najib,
Aye.
Director Owen Moore,
Aye.
Director Pence,
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Case.
Aye. Okay, so the resolution passes. May I have a motion for the authorization of issuance of 1.5 million in general obligation promissory notes, series 2024 to 2025 J?
So moved.
You,
I'll second.
thank you. Okay. Any questions or additional information that you want? All right, well, that was easy. Can I have a roll call vote, Paul?
Director Foley,
Aye.
Director Mendieta Ramos,
Aye. Sorry, it's taking me forever to remove the mute. I'm driving.
No
guys.
worries.
I'm on my way there.
Perfect.
Director Moore Mukunde,
Aye.
Director Najib,
Aye.
Director Owen Moore,
Aye.
Director Pence,
Aye.
Director Baker,
Aye.
Director Burris,
Aye.
Director Case.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Thank you all. Take care.
Okay, next on the agenda is policy approval. So the first policy is A0104-6, duties of officers of MATC District Board. And this was a first read at the last meeting, so now we're looking for a motion for approval.
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Najib. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Pence. Okay, Director Baker.
So, at the last meeting, I raised some questions and concerns about the policy as written. My bad, I did not turn something in writing, which I now realize I guess I should have done. I kind of thought my concerns were whatever, but, so what I would like to propose, and I will make a motion to this, is that we table this for this month, bring it back for final approval next month. And if I could, I will talk about the things that I would recommend changing.
Okay.
So the first item would be, and you're gonna hear this in our work group reports under the chairperson's report today, is coming out of the ad hoc work group on budget, finance, and operations, sort of. We actually have a recommendation for the vice chair to have a slight, yeah.
And I
it's in-
think we all have a copy of the notes you're referencing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and we'll talk about that in a minute in the chairperson's report. So we're actually gonna have an additional role that we suggest for the vice chairperson, and we'll find out today what people think of that. in the secretary's role in number 4, this is really duties that our administrative support provide and the general counsel's office. It's really not duties that the board secretary provides, and so that should be moved under the item above it. And in the treasurer's, I really feel that some of the changes that were made have the treasurer doing administrative work here, actually getting a little too far from our policy work and into more hands-on work that is done in our finance office here, rather than being just the board's sort of policy overseeing an accountability role. And I also feel very strongly that we do not create job classifications for any, or job requirements for any member of a public board in this state. And so I would also want to strike that a treasurer needed to possess certain background in order to be the treasurer. It's, I think sometimes in a smaller nonprofit, that would be a good idea, maybe even in smaller boards around the state where the treasurer may play a more hands-on role within the administration. But in ours, board as a policy board, it's, it would exclude a lot of people from being able to be treasurer. And what we've seen over the years is that people learn the stuff they need to, and it becomes a really good learning experience for people. So those are recommended suggestions that I have actually some language in writing that I would turn over to the general counsel's office. And I can leave it there so we can talk about that, or I can just make my motion to table, which will cut the conversation off. So I'll leave that to the chair to tell me what she wants.
Before we cut that off, is there any other commentary or discussion that we want to have before anybody makes an additional motion?
Some of the things that were in what was written, was given to Sherry, is from the charter of the committee. So there are some statements in there, the charter of, and I was gonna talk about that in treasurer thing. The charter of the committee kind of has that in there. That's the only reason it got pulled. It wasn't a making a job discussion or anything like that. I don't see the difference in having a vice chair or a treasurer do the work on the committee, audit committee. I don't see what is the real difference?
So again, this is part of what it's almost like we should have done the chairperson's report first, might have helped, but we had a lot of conversation in our ad hoc work group with the internal auditor and with people from the finance department. And because the role of that committee goes so far beyond finance, it really audits educational programming, it audits processes, it talks, I need to get all my notes out for all the things that are part of compliance, that we saw this as a broader role than financial. And the treasurer's role on this board is mostly helping to keep the board connected to and giving us more hands-on, more accountability and oversight over finance, that this was a broader role. And we also realized that the treasurer has several things on their plate where the vice chair really has, I mean, vice chair generally exists for when chairs are out of town or sick. And so we thought that that would be a suitable role. And the committee felt strongly. I know Director Foley was a part of that, as well as Director Mendieta Ramos. So we can have some of that discussion now if the chair wants.
Do we want to discuss that now, or do you want to wait for your update? I think it probably makes sense to discuss it now, unless we want to.
You know, we can, again, with the tabling of this, we can put new
Right.
language in and ask that it's brought back for us to review. It's not like there's a strict timeline. Like if we don't finish this, we could have more conversation of it with new language next month, which could help, or do it now, kind of up to the chair.
So I think it probably makes sense for us to have a motion to table this, and then we can have further discussion in your report out from the work group, and then we can all review updated suggestions and changes for future approval.
I move to table until our next regular board meeting.
I second.
Okay, so I believe Director Foley just submitted a motion to table until our next regularly scheduled board meeting. And Dr. Najib seconded that.
Mhm.
Do we need to vote or we just
Well,
do that?
Roll call vote, no discussion.
Roll call vote.
Voice vote?
I'm sorry,
Voice
I'll-
vote?
Voice vote on a table? Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
All right, so we have a motion to table the approval of policy 0104-6 until our next regularly scheduled board meeting so that we can gather feedback and then discuss appropriately. Can I have a voice vote, right? Did we decide?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes to table that. All right. Moving on to the next policy approval. Can I have a motion to approve policy G0301, weapons on MATC property? And we did have a first read last board meeting, and so this would be a policy approval.
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
Okay, whatever. I'm the big policy guy, right? Okay, so at our last meeting, we had quite a bit of conversation about pepper spray. The board received a memo that outlined, and I'm actually looking for it.
If we should have a copy of it in our.
Yeah, we received a memo with additional information, and at the end of the memo, there is some recommended language that we could use. It says, should the board vote to include an exception for pepper spray? The following language, so it would be my recommendation that we strike in the policy, we strike the section in definitions on the first page, the last 3 lines, where it starts with, I can't pronounce it, oleoresin capsicum spray, pepper spray, that we strike that, and that we include the pepper spray language that was prepared for us. And with that amendment, I would be comfortable supporting this tonight as a final.
Okay, do I have a second for the motion with an amendment?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that topic or any other concerns on the policy? Okay, so with that, can I have a voice vote, right? Okay, all those in favor?
Director Case, point of order.
We don't have you.
Did you say
He's important.
he said a point of order?
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to vote initially on the amendment.
He's right.
And then, assuming it is, well, and then after it is either accepted or rejected, vote on the original motion, either in its original form or as amended.
Okay, so our first vote is on the amendment. So can I have all those in favor of approving the amendment?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now can I have all those in favor of approving the policy with the amended language?
Madam Chair. I make a motion that we move the item as amended.
We don't need
Thank
another
you.
motion. We already
We
have
don't?
a pending motion.
Okay, yeah, we
All
do.
right.
Sir, never mind.
Okay.
We do. I second it.
Okay, perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Mm.
Motion passes.
We just did this as a test because you don't have.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was my shot. I appreciate all of your support and help in helping me get through that. The team. All right, and now we're on to reports. And so first is the chairperson's reports. Mark, jump in if you got anything to add, otherwise I will start. So first thing is the Blue Tender fundraising event featuring Dr. Cruz. So President Anthony Cruz will be serving as a guest bartender for a fundraiser on Tuesday, March 4th at the Blue at the Pfister Hotel to benefit the MATC Promise Scholarship. The event runs from 5 to 7 with 10% of food and beverage sales and 100% of tips going directly to the scholarship. So encourage all of you to attend and come up with all kinds of fun drinks for Dr. Cruz to make.
We have to provide a notice of quorum.
Next is the ACCT National Legislative Summit update. So earlier this month, Directors Foley and Pence attended the ACCT National Legislative Summit in Washington, D.C., along with Vice President Laura Bray. The National Legislative Summit informs community college leaders on federal policy issues that impact post-secondary institutions and students. It also provides the opportunity for trustees to meet with congressional representatives and their staff to advocate for community colleges. Would Director Foley and or Pence like to report on the summit?
I'd like to comment on it, but I would defer to Director Pence to start.
There's delegation. It was, first of all, it was a very rewarding experience. It was a lot of fun. I was picked out of the crowd, I guess, to talk in front of our Senator Baldwin about apprenticeships and workforce development. The history was so cool. The architecture there was amazing. It was a fun time. We got to see a Senate vote for Gabbert and RFK. It was just an interesting process and a lot of fun. I think we made some good progress. We met with aides from 3 or 4 Senate offices, and I think we made good progress. We kind of picked our baskets and talked, and it was again, it was very rewarding. So
thank you. Anything to add, Director Foley?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm going to say that I'm clearly more jaded than Director Pence about this
Yeah,
process.
you're the first timer.
Yeah, I have done this 8 or 9 times now for requesting money for college, for the tech colleges, and another 8 or 9 times for what I'm doing now, which is requesting money for public broadcasting and public television. I thought that with the exception of Senator Baldwin's and Representative Moore's offices, the others that we visited were extremely quiet. They were completely non-committal, and in ways that I would have been surprised by in years past. I think that there is an atmosphere in the Capitol building that is unique in those 8 or 9 years of experience. I also witnessed at least one U.S. Senator walking the halls of the Capitol with bodyguards. And I think that says some things about what's going on right now, too. We had a conversation. I don't know if this was mentioned. I don't remember if it was mentioned last month, but actually, I'm pretty sure it was mentioned last month, so I'll be very brief about it. But we have a back of the envelope calculation that the value of the federal dollars that flow to the college in a given year, directly or indirectly, is somewhere between $50 and $60 million. Now, that includes things like a student gets a Pell Grant and pays us tuition with that money. We're counting that sort of thing. Something that I don't think was explained to my full understanding last time that I now have a better understanding of, and that is the budget reconciliation process and how that relates to the potential harm to the medical college in that its endowment would be taxed. Essentially, the problem is that a budget reconciliation process is an extraordinary measure that eliminates the filibuster rules in the Senate. And so to pass legislation normally with the filibuster rules in effect, you need 70 votes in the Senate, which is enough to first vote to close the discussion, and then to vote on the actual substantive bill. So in a budget reconciliation, one of the rules is you can't increase funding from a previous year unless there is an offset. And so they could do that offset from anywhere, I believe. You know, it doesn't have to be from another account that affects us. It doesn't have to be a similar account, but there has to be an offset. And so the thing that had been proposed was that endowments, which are targets right now by many of the new members or the members of the new administration, typically in the context of the Harvards and Yales of the world that have these huge endowments, that the legislature, let me rephrase that, the administration wants to put pressure on people who have those endowments, that is, put them at risk of losing money unless they adhere to certain new requirements, proposals, or strong requests from the administration. So it's not that the medical college was being targeted, it's that it's someone that has an endowment of the kind they wanted to start taxing as the offset to a lot of different kinds of increases that are being requested across the board. I hope that clarifies part of the discussion we had last week, where I left wondering why the offset was required, and that's the explanation that I now have from the folks here at Public Television. So I am very concerned about funding after leaving the Capitol. The staffers were polite. They were not as engaged as I had experienced in the past. That's all I have.
Thank you. And then I have one more thing. So I'd like to recognize Director Burris for receiving an award from the county supervisor and the Black Caucus.
Thank you.
Congrats, observed. And with that, I will turn it over to the work groups for updates. I don't know who wants to go first.
Okay, sure. Sure, do that way. Okay, so, thank you. So we had a ad hoc committee on budget and process oversight, and folks may remember we started this last fall. And without throwing any other particular public system in the light here, there were some things that hit the news about our friends at Milwaukee Public Schools, and I think we all at MATC wanted to make sure that we had appropriate oversight, and that you know, we were sort of investigating what would happen, you know, if we found ourselves in a place where our staffing was bad, or, you know, whatever, how would we know what was going on, and all of that. So that's what sort of prompted the ad hoc committee. It was myself and Director Mendieta Ramos and Director Foley. And then we had several staff members, including Eva Keither joined us. I'm sorry. Joined us regularly, and then several other staff members off and on. Okay, so really we talked about scope, which was looking at the current practices that we used and comparing other organizations to see if we were protecting ourselves. We took a look at the budget process, and actually Eva Keither provided us with a very detailed, very cool sort of step-by-step how it happens. It was really useful. What parties are involved, understanding revenue streams, expenses, all of that sort of thing. So the board has a good understanding of our fiduciary oversight responsibilities. And then we took a deep dive into the role of the internal auditor. And we talked a lot about what the original role was, what's in the original charter, how the current role and responsibilities have changed over time. And really significantly where that person has fallen at different times in sort of reporting lines within the organization, which was fascinating. I mean, like, well, I'll get into that in just a second, but anyway, we also took a look at peer organizations. We took a look at other WTCS schools in the area to see kind of what they did, as well as other governing bodies in a city of the first class like us, like what the school district does. and other college boards, four-year colleges and that sort of thing. And then we wanted to be able to make recommendations for long-term for MATC's accountability practices. And also we took a look to review a few policies. One of the key takeaways from this was that the auditor's function is not just financial, that risk assessment is really much more than financial. It includes athletics, IT, academic issues like attendance keeping, all of that. We talked a lot about risk management, which we have a director, a district risk manager, but their focus is mostly on health and safety from what we understand, and reports to the Office of the General Counsel. We asked a lot of questions about compliance and where compliance falls. And, you know, it's interesting because we all may think of one thing when you think of compliance, but I mean, there's like ADA, FERPA, Title IX, Title IV, other US Department of Ed guidelines, at least as they exist today, accreditation standards, Clery Act, FAA, FCC, okay, whatever. You think. I mean, lots of stuff, a lot of which is decentralized, and which it seems appropriate that it is, but how the board gets a sense of how we are doing in accountability was kind of our interest, is, you know, what's been the relationship with the board chair, etc. And significantly, we found out that that internal auditor is really a department of one. And it's interesting, I don't know if I have it in here, but the internal audit currently is under institutional effectiveness. But, oh no, not,
The auditor?
yeah.
It's under Sherry.
Oh, it is, okay, under the general counsel. There you go. That changed. Yeah, because we were told that it was under institutional effectiveness last fall
Was it?
by
last
the
fall?
internal auditor. Since January.
Last.
Oh, okay. Cool, thank you. It has been under finance, and obviously it's been under institutional effectiveness, and it has reported directly to the president at different times in the past. So it's sort of interesting. Okay, so what you have some notes from our last meeting, which was kind of our recommendations, and that's where we sort of got into the policy A0104-6. So we did spend a bunch of time looking at that. And principally, you know, we said the treasurer needed to be updated, the secretary's role needed to be updated, and we just have a feeling a lot of that stuff is from 100 years ago. I mean, maybe not 100, but long enough ago that, you know, they laid it out in a certain way that no one's really looked at in detail since. But on the issue of the internal audit committee, we had quite a bit of conversation about who should be the board's representative on that committee. And because of sort of the broad nature of the discussions, we did take it from the treasurer and thought it would be appropriate to have the vice chair do it. And again, as I said a little earlier, the vice chair's load is relatively light as an officer. And the treasurer had a number of other duties as well as the secretary. But the other part is that we really thought that the board chair, the board overall needs to have some direct communication with the internal audit. And that a number of other institutions where, for instance, our friends at Milwaukee Public Schools have an entire audit department that just reports directly to the board. And so it was really the work group's recommendation that the board needed to have a more direct relationship with internal audit, specifically the board chair. And that internal audit reports, the board chair should be given those and have the opportunity to have oversight over those. Other recommendations, you'll notice the first one, it says the committee wanted to get input because Director Foley wasn't with us at that meeting, but he has since given us input. I just talked about the internal audit. We really think that the board needs to get a little better understanding of compliance and where compliance resides and what that means, just in terms of us understanding that. We had a number of items that we think will help in board education, and Director Owen Moore and I did meet, and I shared some of our suggestions with her, and I know that the ad hoc committee on board education was going to take some of those up. And the other thing is that we know staffing is hard, but the work group really felt that the internal audit function could use additional staff. And that's kind of what we did.
Could
Anybody
I
else
just
in the
add,
committee want to add?
You
could I just
covered it
add
very
one
well.
thing to that?
Director Foley, go ahead.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to add, and that is, one of the reasons that I thought it was important to have the auditor report directly to the board is the understanding that an internal auditor cannot properly audit a department that it is a member of. It's a conflict of interest. And so, if it's now correct that the auditor reports to the general counsel, then that auditor really cannot be the one who looks at, who audits functions of the general counsel's office. And I don't know how broadly that would extend. Similarly, if the auditor reports directly to the president, then the president's actions cannot be audited by that internal audit function. So I think there are some details to figure out with the college's legal counsel as to how this needs to work in order to maximize the scope of what the auditor can review. But as I heard about how there are, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all the explanations that Director Baker was giving, but I think it was 80 different offices that had something to do with compliance, that there's really no way we can provide oversight to that without someone being in between us and 80 people. And I'm not sure what the best route to that is, but I think it's a concern. It's not a concern because I think we are out of compliance. It's a concern because of what we watched unfold in the newspapers last summer and last fall about multiple social service agencies and educational institutions in our city who were found to be out of compliance with some pretty basic things, and the board members expressing shock and surprise 8 months after deadlines were being missed. Thank you.
Dr. Najib?
Yeah. I understand what Chairman Foley said, but just from a common sense point of view, the board, the reason why we do internal audit to be aware of what's going on, so we can have corrective measures we can fix the problem before it become a real problem or worse. So I think the board, as a supervising kind of entity, they need to know what's going on internally so they can act appropriately. How can we achieve that, taking into account what was mentioned?
So just a clarifying question, we do have an external audit firm that does the full audit for us, correct? Financial audits. Okay.
But this order is for more processes.
Right, I was just trying, because I'm just trying to connect it to, like, in the corporate world, you have internal audit typically reports up into either compliance if it's its own thing, usually under legal or under finance. But there's also the external auditor that kind of does the official audit of it with an unbiased perspective. It's like SOX compliance or any of those things as well.
We don't have that.
What was the last part?
SOX audits.
You mean, assuming.
Outside of
spatial.
just outside of just financial,
Oh,
like
outside of-
process audits,
Process
things like that,
audit.
yeah.
Oh, we have that one auditor.
Internally, no, I'm
Even
talking
externally?
external.
I don't think we do that external. Right, do it external?
So I mean, if there's concerns with unbiasedness, I mean, it may be, we might wanna,
Might be something to consider.
right.
Absolutely.
Because obviously, like, somebody, they're gonna report to some internal, they report to somebody, so somebody's gonna have.
Right, but I mean, at least if they report to the board, we don't necessarily work day to day with all the departments, the president does.
Yeah.
So at least there's some.
Oh,
Yeah, I think what we tend to see is, like, right now we're doing, and we approved hiring an external audit of some HR practices, correct? Right, so I think we've done that on sort of an issue by issue or department by department basis.
Because of expertise. Right, that's-
Exactly.
because anybody can audit something, but if somebody, it's not just the auditing piece, it's also then the recommendations that come along with it based on that firm's expertise in that area.
But I think auditors don't necessarily give, I mean, when you do like an audit, it's compared to your processes versus making a recommendation.
Depends on what you're hiring.
It depends on what it is, right? It depends on what it is.
Purpose you're doing it.
But like if you're just auditing to make sure that you're compliant with your processes, like a compliance audit would just be.
Right, a compliance
Oh,
audit,
yeah.
right. But in the
Okay.
case that, something like the case that right now we're doing with our hiring and
Right.
complaint processes, it's in addition to compliance, they're
Right.
doing compliance and auditing actual cases and then giving us recommendations.
Right,
based on
best practices,
best
industry standards,
practices.
right. Any other questions?
Here's where you go from here.
Okay. So, I mean, the ad hoc committee was just that. Okay,
Mhm.
we're not an official body. We were an ad hoc committee. We did investigation. These are the things we think are good. So, you know, the question is now, from this point, it would probably be wise for perhaps the chair and the vice chair to sit down with the administration and talk through some of these to see operationally what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and then come back to the board if we have to vote on something.
Okay.
Does that sound appropriate
Yeah.
to committee members?
Yeah.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
work from a legal perspective? Do I need to, okay. Do I need to officially do anything?
No.
Okay. We can just like add that to new business?
We'll just direct.
Direct it,
How
got
about
it,
that?
all right,
We'll direct the board chair and vice chair to meet with administration to
got it,
work out some details that them could come back to us for approval.
got it.
So I want to, I'm not hearing everything. So the board needs to know what's going on in internal audit. That's what we're talking about. We need to be aware of what internal audit results so we can be active participant in correcting the problem before we get external audit. Is that right? That what we're discussing?
Yeah, so the next steps would be for the chair and the vice chair to take the recommendations of the committee to the president and legal counsel and review the recommendations and then bring forward to the board a recommendation. I'll just keep saying that word.
Or policy change.
Right. Okay. We'll move on to the next work group update.
These are because we shared these in December and this is the first time we've actually had to talk about it.
So recognize that one of the other ad hoc committees that was created was an onboarding committee, really focusing on what are the needs for the board and training and development. So thank you to Director Mendieta Ramos, Director Case, Director Burris for insights. And I know you started a little late, but we still got some good things in there. And there's probably still more work to do on this, but we also have the handbook here. And if you look towards the back, there's a calendar of events that has some training aligned to it, the little blue at the bottom of it, that kind of captures some of the things we found. So we looked through and identified some of the things from the handbook that maybe were currently missing that needed to be there based on some of the training that we had with HRC, some of the experiences that we had, and tried to think about how to order them and schedule them in ways that meet the training of the board annually throughout the year. One of the things we recognize is a lot of times when you join the board, you get trained, and then 2 months later, you know what you need to know now because you didn't know what you didn't know as you do that onboarding process. So thinking about onboarding as an annual thing that's continuous, both for new people and for refresher for those of us who are already on the board. So some of the things that were key were the responsibilities of the trustees, how a board meeting works, some of those basics, how to make change. We heard a lot about this, like if you actually wanted to bring forward a recommendation for change, how does that look? What are the steps? Where does that go through? Policy changes, things like that. There were also several pieces of how programs are approved, conflicts of interest, where we can step in, where we can't. And then some things that we thought it would be important for all board members to have are like a tour with a special emphasis on those areas that we each bring for expertise, some open meetings law training, which we do have, but just making sure that that stays. Parliamentary procedure, it's not easy, so getting some real training on that. And there is a cheat sheet in the handbook too with some of those details, so. And there used to be that one that was handed out. I found that in talking to Beth, so we talked about getting that back again. And then like just training on who to connect with when you have questions or need to tell somebody you're not gonna be here. Meetings with senior leaders and that financial overview piece was really critical too. That ongoing financial overview. One of the things that I think was really key that we were stuck on at the end there was whose responsibilities are each of these pieces, like who schedules that training each month? Who makes sure that those open meetings laws training happens? So there's still a little bit of work to be done around figuring out who owns each of the pieces in this, and also to look and see, are we missing things? Are there things that we're recognizing now after hearing more from Lauren, Director Baker, that we need to include in a deeper level, like that compliance piece especially. And then the other thing I think that was really key that came out of this was the need to provide an orientation for people who might want to be on the board before they're on the board, to really give them an overview of what it takes, what's expected, what the conflicts of interest are, all of those. So when people choose to be on the board, they know what they're getting into, they know what those expectations are, and they can make that decision with all of those pieces. So I will stop there.
I feel like some of these might be a crossover onto the duties of the board.
It's a little bit.
Yeah, so we might, since we've got that on the table to talk about in the future, I think if anything, that either the work group shared strikes anybody's thoughts on updates to duties. Be appropriate.
Could I add something here?
Go ahead.
I think again, I've said this at past meetings, but the implementation of this has taken some time. We have, and I think you have on your seats, a copy of the most recent draft of something called a board handbook. And something like this has existed for some time. I understand that in the era when Director Baker was in her first long term on the board, that they started with a 3-ring binder that was immense and impossible to work with, and it was scaled down. I see this booklet, when it's finished, serving really 2 functions simultaneously. One is to be available to anyone who is thinking about applying or anyone who has applied to be appointed to the board, so they know what they're getting into, as Director Owen Moore just said. I think it would be useful to the appointment committee as well to have this available as they approach their annual duties with regard to making new or renewing appointments, particularly for the members of that board who are not from Milwaukee County and are not as actively involved or as proximate to the activities of the college on a regular basis, and where turnover in the chairman's job is chairman of the Board of Supervisors job is more common than it is in Milwaukee. So that brings up questions about how much depth to go into, how much to refer to other materials, how much can we handle by making this available on the website electronically and having actual links to supporting documents rather than beefing up the manual itself or the handbook itself with copies of every statute and policy and what have you. I think that we're pretty close to having the right mix there now, but one of the things I would ask is that you do review this draft. I'm not looking at this time especially for us to be doing a red line of the text. I think the question we need to have answered from all of your collective expertise is, given the multi-purposes of that handbook, Are we addressing the right topics? Are we missing any topics? Do we have topics that should not be in a book that is intended to have that particular combination of purposes and goals? And of course, the age-old, are there any glaring mistakes that we seem to have overlooked? So I would hope that we can get comments from each of you, say in the next 2 weeks, about those questions. Have we covered the right stuff? Have we covered it in the right depth? What's missing, if anything? And then we can figure out a method to get what I hope will be a final draft submitted to the board at the March meeting. I think this is a process that needs to come to an end. Then I think we need to start talking about perhaps with the administration internally rather than among ourselves, as to looking at that calendar that the working committee came up with, when we should be doing training on specific topics. We really should assign someone now or very soon to prepare the curriculum and the materials for that, and to identify who's going to be responsible for doing that, at least in this next go round of fiscal years. Thank you.
Real quick, I would be terrible if I did not thank Beth for all of her work on this. I learned so much from the history and the resources that were there. And so she took all of the things and helped to revise and everything. So thank you for that, and to everyone.
Seems like you guys did some great work. Fortunately, I wasn't able to be permitted to join you. Everything looks great. Good job.
So Director Foley asked for the other board members to review the handbook and what they presented and provide feedback. Do we want the feedback to go to Director Owen Moore? Okay.
Would it be possible to give us an electronic version? So a lot easier for you to mark that up.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, because if I do it in Word or Google, or if I do it in Google, it messes up some of the
Just a
formatting,
PDF.
but maybe it's easier to comment. I just wanted to know what the board.
Just anything that.
I mean, if you do it in Word, we should be able to
We can edit.
edit
Word
it.
is fine.
Yeah,
Or
I think
PDF.
Word is fine. And I think if the formatting gets a little wonky, and whatever electronic version will be okay with
I don't wanna
that.
mess it up on
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, then I will turn over to Dr. Cruz for President's Report.
Thank you very much, Director Case, and good evening, everybody. It's almost evening. Great things happening at the college, as always. Wanted to start off by talking about our enrollment report. Again, our spring enrollment is at about 7.7% higher than it was last year at the same time, and it's 4.5% higher than our budgeted goal for this year. So it's great news. We are actually on track now, because we're almost through the spring. We have a little bit left, but almost through the spring, that we are now 3 years in a row where we've had an increase in our student enrollment. So that's a great thing. We're still tracking and trying to get to where we were before the pandemic when it comes to the number of students and our FTE account, but at the same time, we are improving on a yearly basis. On January 30th, MATC had the pleasure of hosting the 10-year anniversary of M Cubed. And there's a lot to celebrate in the last 10 years and what's been accomplished through M Cubed. 900 MPS juniors in the class of 2025 submitted streamlined college applications through the Milwaukee Direct Admit, which makes it a lot easier for students to apply for college. Makes that very easy also for especially students that are first generation college students that maybe not have the support at home. Since 2019, more than 700 MPS seniors have earned 8,000 college credits from UWM and MATC through the College Connections Initiative, saving those students and their families $2.6 million in tuition. Since 2018, 5,000 MPS students have participated in work-based learning and job fairs to explore careers, and 10,000 freshmen and sophomores have toured MATC and UWM campuses since 2017. So again, MCube continues to do great work. The partnership between us, MPS and UWM continue to do really significant achievements. Black History Month events, under the theme celebrating our history, building our legacy. MAT celebrated Black History Month with a number of activities for students, our employees, and community members. Some highlights: movie night featuring the film Just Mercy, which dives into deep topics of justice, resilience, and Black history. A panel discussion titled Engaging African American Students in College from Enrollment to Completion. I was able to be there for that. Really got some great feedback and information from our alumni and current students about their experiences here at the college and navigating higher education in general. We had a visit from Claiborne Benson, founder of the Wisconsin Black Historical Society Museum and MATC alum, who discussed the importance of genealogy and understanding where you come from. And coming up on this Thursday, celebrating Changemakers, a Black History Month banquet will be held on Thursday, February 27th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. here at the downtown campus in M605. Definitely a month to celebrate. It's almost over, but it's been a really great month of celebration. Student Leadership Series. I hosted our first President's Student Leadership Series on February 12th here at the downtown campus. Warren was there. He did a nice introduction. Thank you, Warren, for being there. The series is an opportunity for students to learn and develop their leadership skills from some of Milwaukee's most prominent leaders. We were very happy to have with us for that session Margaret Henningsen, co-founder and one of the first U.S. banks started by Black women, and Greg Wesley, who leads Wisconsin's largest community foundation with more than $1 billion in financial assets. I think they both were amazing, giving their journeys, their leadership journeys, their life journeys, things that they've struggled with, but also a lot of their achievements and what the great things that they've accomplished in their lives and their careers. It was great to see how students, the questions that students had for them at the end of the session. We're going to continue to have this leadership series going on, hopefully bringing in other leaders just like these that can share their stories with our students and encourage our students to persevere in their careers and in their educational journeys. The Wisconsin Broadcasters Association announced its Student Excellence Awards this month. Students in our television and video production and digital content creation teams submitted 25 entries, and 10 of them were recognized as best in the state, gathering 6 first-place awards and 4 second-place awards. This is the double amount of awards our students received last year and places them on par with the numbers awarded to some of the large state universities. Congratulations to all the students who entered the work and that won these achievements. Voice of the College. We held our first Voice of the College event Monday afternoon, yesterday, when an opportunity for employees to offer their input about our recruitment and complaint processes. So this Voice of the College Live series is something that we're going to continue doing. We'll be taking different types of topics and exploring those with our faculty and staff, all our employees, to make sure we get feedback from them. And we focused yesterday on our recruitment and complaint processes. We introduced the firm that we've hired to do the review and the audit, and they were there. They explained what their scope of work is, and then we had employees at all our campuses. So this event was simulcast, and so they were able to, we had individuals that were facilitating groups of employees at each of our campuses and locations, and they were able to then give their input about what they feel is going right when it comes to our recruitment and our hiring practices and also our complaint processes, and what things they could see as improvements. And this is great feedback as we start this process, to not only have the firm give us obviously their expertise, but as well as having our employees have a voice at the table to understand what they feel about the process and how they think that the process can be improved. So I think that's something really important, and we'll continue to give updates on this process. It's probably going to take a couple of months for the firm MRA to conclude their audit and their review of our processes. And then I'll be happy to come back to the board and share their findings and things that we can improve on those 2 processes. On a lighter note, Pickleball is here. That has arrived at MATC. Students, faculty, and staff are invited to use our pickleball courts. We have 2 courts here on downtown campus, downstairs in the gym. Paddles and balls are available to check out. It's totally free for faculty, staff, and students. The courts are open this semester Tuesdays through Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Wednesdays and Fridays from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I hope to see some of you there. Warren, you got to get a group out there. We got to get some people out there.
I'm in.
Is it
You're
open
in.
to alumni? Is it open to alumni?
We can work on that. We can work on that.
I'm excited.
If
I
they're
have not
interested.
tried.
If they're interested.
If they're interested.
I haven't, but I want to.
Also, we continue with every year we have free tax preparation for students and staff. And the MATC County students are once again offering free tax preparation for MATC students and staff earning $70,000 or less. This is a win-win for our students and the community. Students and staff may drop off documentation at the Oak Creek campus on Tuesdays from February 4th through April 1st. No latecomers. We got to get it in before the 15th. Between the hours of noon and 2 p.m. and then from 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. I also wanted to give you an update on, I think it's great. We want to congratulate Dr. Sadiq Azaku for being named Vice Provost for Learning. Reporting to Executive Vice President Dr. Philip King, effective February 17th. As Vice Provost for Learning, Dr. Sadiq will serve as the Chief Academic Officer of the college. In this role, he will have the administrative authority over the instructional deans and provide strategic leadership for the college's teaching, learning, and public service programs. And it's great to see somebody from MATC go up the ranks and now being our Vice Provost. I think, again, congratulations to Sadiq for this honor. I want to close by wanted to end the report by addressing the Dear Colleague letter that we received last week concerning discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. And so MATC continues to review this guidance from the U.S. Department of Education to determine what and if and what kind of steps we take, the next steps that we take on this. Regardless of the outcome, the executive leadership team, the cabinet, and I remain committed to serving all our students and our employees and helping them succeed. And we want to make sure that, we're there for them and we welcome everyone to our campuses and make sure that everyone's getting the education that they need. And we're providing the support services and the employment for our employees and the support they need to be successful as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Director Pence, I think you're next.
Okay, so the Advisory Audit Committee met last on February 5th, and whichever direction we're gonna go is fine. As far as the reporting part of it. Chris Morgan, Assistant General Counsel, talked about the community-based organizations. There was an audit of that. And this typically offers non-degree programs to students, GED, and adult high school. There was a review prompted due to potential conflict of interest of employees, and there was some better documentation that went on. There was one of these community-based organizations that closed, that I believe there was some equipment that MATC had to recover from one of these organizations. So that was reported on during the audit committee. We talked about risk assessments and third-party risk management. There's a toolkit available to higher education institution called EDUCAUSE. The Higher Education Community Assessment Tool has a big acronym behind it, of course, was discussed and noted that we are evaluating this tool for potential adoption This is for technology and data transfers from people that are contracted to work here to the school. So, that was what else was talked about. Of course, we had conversations on our audit follow-up document that as we talk about whichever way this is gonna go, I think that should be my opinion would be just to make it a universal document of receipts. As we move forward, whatever direction. There was, again, a lot of things have been sitting on that report for years that need to be followed up on and should be. It was sent to Beth, and I don't know, I didn't see it in our report here. Again, a lot of it has to do with our Zancel loads and what was found with Wisconsin Technical College system. There's a creation of a new Zancel code for accreditation that was talked about. Conflict of interest regarding scheduling was talked about. So yes, there are a number of things that the committee does besides the finance situations. We are on track to meet the charter requirements, and we are also, this committee is also then looking at re-looking at the charter, which is done every 2 years. So I believe that's it.
All right, and Warren Murphy for our student report.
Thank you, Director Case, Chair Foley, Dr. Cruz, members of the board, community and administration. I kind of have a lot for you this week. So a week ago, a group of roughly 20 student leaders took a trip to Madison for our WSG legislative seminar to lobby and encourage our legislators to support our colleges. For the first time in WSG's 50-year history, we had a sitting Wisconsin governor in attendance. Tony Evers spoke about his budget for the year and how technical schools and school in general was at the top of his priority list. It was really cool. During our time at the Capitol, I attempted to visit Supreme Moore McCunday's office. There was a sign on the door that said, "Head upstairs for a velibration." Well, I headed upstairs, and Supreme Moore McCunday was in the middle of doing a press release regarding establishing a special day of observation for Bellar Phillips. Moore McCunday asked me if I would like to stand with them for the announcement, to which I graciously accepted, and for which I'm extremely honored. The legislative seminar isn't the only interesting event our students are taking part in this semester. Our college media, MATC Times, is heading to New York City this week for the College Media Association ProCon 2025, where student publications from all around the country meet, and it's just really a nice conference where we talk with industry professionals, and we actually have a chance at winning a couple of awards. We're nominated for, I believe, 4 this year, so we're hoping to bring back some nice accolades for the college. With our Supreme Court and superintendent elections upon us, the campus is again seeing an increase in students excited about exercising their constitutional rights and participating civically. There are a few events in the works, including a watch party for the upcoming Supreme Court candidate event. Our district student association has been busy as well. As I previously mentioned that we were meeting with Dr. King regarding technology resources for students, that meeting was very fruitful, and we have taken some steps to revive a committee focused on this exact issue. We hope to bring updates as that committee progresses. Another thing that DSA is currently working on is getting a bill reintroduced to the Wisconsin legislature that would effectively exempt textbooks from sales tax. In 2001, Assembly Bill 264 proposed exactly this, had bipartisan support, but there was no room in the budget for it. This year, with a little more room in the budget, would be the perfect time to reintroduce this bill. DSA has already partnered with multiple other college governments to get the word out about the bill, and will be continuing to garner support regarding reintroducing this legislation. This semester is a full one already. Students are active on campus, students are actively engaged in our organizations, and students are especially active civically. With that, thank you again, Supreme Moore McCunday, for allowing me to stand with you as you propose the Bellar Phillips Special Day of Observation, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Great job.
Okay, next we have the legislative update, and I believe Laura is covering that, and you should have a handout.
And then Rainey.
And Rainey's online. Okay, perfect.
So I included a couple more items than you usually have, just like a 1 or 2 page. And Ramey will go through what's happening at the state level. We did include the priorities that were put forth by the Wisconsin Technical College for the federal priorities, so that I'll go through very briefly. But why don't I have Ramey? I mean, obviously, a lot is happening in legislative affairs, if you didn't know. And so we're trying to track both from a policy perspective at the federal level, what are things that have happened in the past that we're trying to see some movement on, and just gauge whether or not those things have any traction. So I'll have a report. And then we're in the middle of the biennium budget. And the overall like headline is Governor Evers had essentially put forth what the Wisconsin Technical College was asking for. And the other headline was when we did our visits, and Dr. Cruz was a part of that, and Chair Foley, when we did our visits in Madison, like people really like what the tech college system does. And they're very grateful for how we serve the district and your leadership. And so it was a very positive visit to our state legislature. So I feel like that we're in good shape. I mean, certainly they'll have to negotiate this, but I feel like that we're in a positive place in the state and well regarded for the work we do for the citizens of the district we serve. So Ramey, with that headline, do you want to get into the details?
Great. Thank you, Laura, and good evening, everyone. So I'm going to just give a very high level overview of what the governor included in his 25-27 biennial recommendation. It's only about a week out, and so we're still kind of working with the tech college system to do an analysis of some of the details. And we can certainly, share that information as we learn more. But some of the high level items I included in the report, it's not limited to only the 4 or 5 bullet points. Certainly there are a lot more. But I think, the biggest good news, right, is the 45 million proposed increase to general aid for the tech college system. There's also a very substantial increase to Wisconsin grants. It looks a little unique in how I have it framed for you today because it was split in two versus just an across the board increase, mostly to highlight additional funds that are going to be needed as a result of 2023 Wisconsin Act 80, which is a really big, robust, not controversial technical bill as it relates to a number of items in the technical college space and financial aid. And one of those items is just to sync up how Wisconsin grants are based on prorated on credit load, to sync that up with federal Pell. And so the governor made 2 distinctions there rather than just clump it all together. He wanted to itemize kind of a need for an increase for those students to address eligibility for the program. Otherwise, we get increased wait lists there. There's funding for open educational resources, which is something we had advocated for. Funding for the system office upgrades. I don't have that on the bullet point, but that was something that was really important for system office operations to allow for state funding to reduce the reliance on federal funding to ensure that this support that the system office provides college is, reasonable and working for everyone to make good use of funds. And then also there were a number of policy items included, and I'll kind of come back to the process on policy items that don't tend to have a fiscal estimate, in addition to some kind of more smaller programs on nursing refresher. I think I have included there, for example, to encourage individuals to kind of go back for some of these refresher courses if they haven't been in the field of nursing for a while. There's a number of tuition remission items proposed as well. A language to repeal the prohibition on rehired annuitants, which is something we've advocated for quite some time. And then a new item specific to grants to technical college district boards for adoption of artificial intelligence. This sort of kind of is a trailer, or I should say a parallel item to the study committee on artificial intelligence, just looking at how to support institutions as, we're kind of faced with, well, I should say artificial intelligence is letting us know it's here. And then, we have to sort of catch up often as institutions and adapt accordingly. So a number of items in addition to The items I proposed today, there's one area I haven't been able to do a deep dive in yet. I'm sure the system is looking to learn more about some overhauls in the corrections space that I think certainly could impact us and some of the programming we offer. Still learning more about that, but the governor has proposed closing down one prison and kind of reimagining the correction system in terms of providing support to individuals, you know, who are reentering the community after serving their time. So kind of stay tuned for updates in that correction space. That alone is a very large item that could be negotiated, you know, in the budget or outside of the budget. It's quite a large proposal that so far does have some bipartisan support. In terms of budget process, what will happen next? The Nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau will do its analysis of the entire document. They're fantastic. They, you know, create documents that kind of make it easier for regular people to kind of understand what's being proposed. The Joint Committee on Finance will review policy items. Typically, all policy items, as I indicated before, they come out as non-fiscal policy, and then the committee doesn't, you know, tend to entertain them throughout the process. There will be public hearings across the state. You know, there's always an effort to have decent geographical representation so that no one individual is having to travel too far to kind of express their feelings on budget items. And then legislative action will happen kind of, you know, mid-spring. So, you know, April, May, and June, assuming they stick to their normal timeline, which is a goal of having a budget complete by June 30th. For then the governor's signature in July. As has been indicated multiple times, you know, a lot of things are up in the air with changes at the federal level. There are some pretty kind of important lawsuits at the state Supreme Court level that I think will, you know, really dictate how some legislators look at a timeline for the budget process. So things are sort of pending right now when it comes to, you know, what's the next step and when, but we will march forward, of course, with our advocacy plan to support these initiatives so that, you know, we can be prepared and ready to go when the process, you know, really starts to kick off. Separate from the budget items, and then I'll pause to see if there are some questions. I'd also just wanted to flag, and I have included these items in my report now, probably for about a year. The Joint Legislative Council Study Committees, there are two committees that we've kind of been monitoring. One is just the future of the University of Wisconsin system. That on its own is very robust and in some instances doesn't directly impact us, and sometimes it does directly impact us depending on the recommendations that may come from that study committee. So think about things like how transfer credits, for example, governance, et cetera. So we're kind of waiting to see what's recommended. The Legislative Council will meet later this week to consider these recommendations. And they're only recommendations. They have to be introduced as standalone bills and then move through the traditional process. And so, you know, doesn't automatically mean these are going to become law. They're pretty robust in terms of some of the policy items being proposed. And then also the study committee on the regulation of artificial intelligence. And I alluded to that $10 million earmark I proposed. And so that certainly, you know, could kind of run parallel to the budget as well. So I'm waiting to see what the Joint Legislative Council will do on those two reports. And then also ongoing is the Legislative Audit Bureau. It's a nonpartisan support. It's a support agency of the legislature. The Joint Committee on Audit had them begin an audit of DEI programs and executive branch agencies. So that would include the Wisconsin Technical College system, not individual colleges. So we're watching for completion. It's expected to probably come out later this year, late this year, probably winter of this year. And then last, and I'll pause for questions, but also look to Dr. Cruz and Chair Foley and Laura to kind of fill in with our legislative seminar. We did have a really good day in Madison. I think we had 9, 10, 11 appointments. We were back to back, really well received. We had Democrats and Republicans. We had, you know, freshman lawmakers and more senior lawmakers in the mix. And I thought it was a really positive day. lots of interest and compliments about, what we're doing as a college. And so it was quite positive. So I'll certainly let others fill in there with their feedback as well. And then we are still looking to identify a date for our legislative breakfast. We're hoping April. Once we get something locked in, we will inform all of you. So I will say thank you and pause for questions. Laura and others, feel free to add anything that I may have left out or add some commentary on the legislative seminar if you wish.
We can maybe do questions on the state and then I can fill in the federal.
Yep, that works.
Great.
Any questions online? Questions in the room?
I'm wondering, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if there was any, you mentioned some of the effects at UW as it relates to technical college and things we have to be concerned about. I'm wondering if there is any concern about percentage of admission at the state college level. The idea of going to, we're going to not consider necessarily race or gender, et cetera, but we're just going to take the top percentage in a class and accept them into our colleges. Is there any concern that we have to have at the technical college level as that relates, directly or indirectly?
So I'll give you my response and then I'll defer to others to follow up. But I think the technical college is more unique in that we do accept everyone. I think you may be referring to legislation that was passed last session that required that top, 5% or 10% of students to be admitted based on GPA, and nothing else. And so certainly that has been very difficult, I think, in particular for K-12 entities to figure out how that works. And parents, of course, want to know, where their students fall and whatnot. So I think that's what you were referencing, but I'll defer to others who maybe have more expertise in kind of the admissions process as it relates specifically to the technical college system compared to the UW system. And otherwise, I'll have to follow back up with you and get more detailed response.
Just to follow up, I mean, just as an open access institution, I don't think that we have any concerns around that.
Okay.
I think our concerns are more related to either special programming or support systems that are for specific populations. But I believe that from an admission standpoint, I don't think that we have to worry. Even for our limited access programs, that's not a variable that we have to worry about.
Director Foley, did you have a question? I
I
noticed your applause, not your hand raised, but I'm going with it.
It was not intended to be applause. It was intended to be a waved hand. I think Dr. Cruz said what I was intending to say, but I was going to quote Layla Merrifield, who's the new president of Tech College System Office, as saying the tech colleges will concede and accept 100% of the top 100% of any graduating high school class.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's not admissions that are going to be an issue for us. It's going to be the other things Dr. Cruz identified.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room?
I just will say on the state budget, for state budgeting purposes, last year, the governor had a number and then joint finance had a much lower number. So we should just know that this is good news now, and you go through the process and we adapt. And we try to get as much information. I mean, Ramey's great. Like, she's in the Capitol almost every day, but certainly, and reporting back on what she's hearing. And so we'll keep you abreast and let you know where we can be thoughtful and strategic on how to use that legislative breakfast and education and making sure people know what we do. And that's the best thing we can do right now. Yep. On the federal side, I just thought I'd highlight a couple of things. The one that I would say probably has been consistent, and this is on that second sheet that's in the packet, that I think you have, is workforce Pell. So the big push has been to expand Pell, that it would allow for shorter term and shorter duration programs to be Pell eligible. So for us, that's some early childhood education, and it's also trucking and some other programs that don't meet the minimum credit hours in order to get Pell. This, every year we hear, this has support on both sides of the aisle, but ... They're trying to figure out a way for it to pay for it, and that's a little bit what Chair Foley alluded to. Generally speaking, across the aisle, people are supportive of the concept. It's just the differences in how you'd actually pay for it. And that's where the devil's in the details. So that one, just regardless of what's happening in other parts of the federal government, like people are, that's still on people's radar screen as important. And then the next one is really to protect the things that we count on. So like Perkins and adult education funding, apprenticeships, and the other list of things you see below there. We provided information to all the people we met with to say this is the amount of federal funds we get for all those programs last year, and gave some highlights to, how those programs affect our students. And so those are the real big things. And then also, obviously, we talked about the importance of the Pell program and what it means to our students, and just broadly that is absolutely something to continue to support. So I'd take any questions on that. The other thing we're tracking is if a budget is ever adopted at the federal level, we do have an appropriations that has passed through committee that would provide 1.1 million to student parents that was advanced through Senator Baldwin. It has advanced and been approved at her subcommittee. And now the question is does the federal government actually adopt a budget, or do they just do continuing resolutions forever until next year's budget? So those are the updates on the federal side.
Any questions on federal states? Any questions online? Not seeing any. Thank you.
I'll see you at Blue Tender.
Yes, you will. Thank you. All right. So next is board monitoring. So we do have review of the board self-evaluation instrument. So this is not an approval needed, but a review of the tool that we use. So I would ask the board members to take a look at that. And Beth, I think it was sent out, was it not?
That's a
Yeah. So take a look at that. And if you guys have any feedback, please get that back to Beth, is that okay? In advance of the next board meeting in the next 2 weeks, so that if we have topics to discuss, we can add it to the agenda of the next board meeting. And then next we've got student satisfaction inventory. So Dr. King, I think that's you.
I'm not sure if you had something at your table.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. And then you do have something up on the screen. Joining me is Tony T. Tony, thank you for being here. Dr. Wong has done actually a tremendous amount of work on this as well. She is unfortunately, she's at HLC training, becoming a reviewer, so she can't be here today. So some of what we'll present is work that she's also doing. So I want to make sure you know where credit is due, I think, when you convey this. So if it sounds like it's good, credit is due to her as well, okay? We'll switch off back and forth, giving some feedback. What you see in front of you, though, is the results of two types of assessments. The college regularly undertakes these. That would be a matter for if there are more questions about surveys we issue, that'd be for IERI to comment on. But the student satisfaction inventory is a regular success inventory. It measures both how students perceive the college, kind of what's going well, but also any of the barriers. There's a set of traditional questions that are asked, about 40. The college gets to actually ask additional 5, up to 10, 9 or 10. And we do that on a regular basis. So we have results from SSI, and then we also have results from, we used to, what's called the EAB, used to be called the Education Advisory Board. We'll go through both. SSI is first, okay? And then we'll trade off as needed. I think we're chiming in once, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So if we move to here we are, so you see in general on the slide deck. So there's a lot of info here, but the reason I wanted to show this to you first is it just represents the 8 general categories. So this is how the information gets grouped, 8 general categories. There are bars, and the bars moving across have to do with each of the categories, but 3 groups of 3 by color are 3 different time periods over from this past year, 2024. Yellow is 2022, blue is 2020, And then there's a bar or two lines across the top. And so the two lines across the top tell you about national averages. Forgive me on the color. I know the very top bar, everybody's like, what color is that? But it's not. They're both slightly blue. The one at the top, lesser blue. So the lesser blue one is 2024. The one right below it is 2022. Okay, so in general, you can see where we are. Right now, the reds are 2024 data. That's last year. And you can see to some extent, although in a 2-year previous period, we were kind of at the national or slightly below the national, but in general, not markedly so. You do see in terms of our overall satisfaction scores being higher than they were in the 2020 period, which in some cases, as a reminder or a reflection, still coming out of COVID. And students' perceptions about what's going on there. General categories, again, there are academic advising, admissions, financial aid, campus climate, campus services in general, instructional effectiveness, which is important, registration effectiveness, safety and security, and student centeredness. So in general, here's how everything fits. Here's how all the questions fit into the bar, and how the 50 questions line up. Okay, next slide. So we're going to group the outcomes in kind of 2 categories. First slide here is strength. The next is about concerns. Areas of strength are met with high satisfaction. And for all of you, I pulled the scores back out, but if you go back to the bar graph, we don't have to. Reminder, it's 7-point scale. And in our scale of how we're doing, these end up being anywhere between like 6.5 to 6.2. So we're close to doing fairly well, okay? But these are areas where the students have said, you're doing fairly good. These are high importance with high satisfaction. College is diverse. We have access to the right computers or technology. Our academic plan or guides help in course taking. And finally, MATC effectively communicates important information to students. Okay? These are the highest. Going to the next slide. And these are areas of challenges and concern. Again, students high importance, but lower satisfaction. Again, when lower satisfaction comes in, these were coming in the high 5s. So close to 6 out of a 7-point scale. Okay, so it's not like these are coming in at 1s and 2s. I do represent, so parenthetically, you see the red on purpose because the questions are framed or the statements are in the positive. So it might be kind of confusing. So it might read as I receive ongoing feedback, but basically the student saying, I don't get ongoing feedback about my progress, academic progress. My academic advisor is not necessarily available when I need to. I seldom get the runaround when seeking feedback. And there is not enough financial support without needing loans. So again, these are lower challenges or concerns, okay? Next slide. So in general, again, we want to just make sure we have, again, the broadness of both. So we had the EAB feedback as well. And just for a precursor, this is about a year and a half ago, EAB, we work with them regularly. They came and they did some work and assessment. That means they actually dug through our entire website. They called our call center. They looked at kind of how we do email traffic, and they visited us in person. And this is the feedback that they gave us. And if we turn to the next slide, these are grouped with recommendations they gave and then the actions they're taken. And I'll turn this first slide over to Tony.
Thanks, Dr. King. And so I'll handle a few of these just because some of the action steps and fall into the areas that I help lead. So one of the first recommendations is make the application page more prominent and make enrollment steps more prominent. The good news about this for us is we were already engaged in kind of a continuous improvement mode on the website. So this aligned with some things we were already doing. We were already rebuilding the major Apply Now page, more graphical with that checklist. So that was kind of already ready. It made it more prominent on this page. And then in line with the recommendations, we also added an apply button to the very top of every single page. So in the prior state, there was an apply button that's very prominent on the home page. Every single pathway page had it. Every single program page had it. This elevates it. So at the top of every single page in the external facing website, you have that opportunity to go right one click to the application. So that was the first set of recommendations. The second set of recommendations is around finding, the spaces that you need to find. And this was particular to the downtown campus. So a lot of the actions that we're talking about are also particular to the downtown campus. So we've got some digital kiosks that are built into some of the facility renovations that the college has been doing, primarily at the C building entrance and the new student center entrance. And so we've been reviewing vendor proposals for basically a wayfinding kiosk in those stations, in addition to physical presence of people to help in the highest traffic locations. We've selected a vendor, and the way that wayfinding is anticipated to work is that you can use the kiosk to get directions of where to go in particular to find something. And then that can actually pop up as a QR code that you can take with you on a mobile device. And just remember, the directions it's not like, okay, the kiosk told me how to get there, but I can't take the kiosk with me. You can get it on your mobile phone. And the other piece is there's been a lot of good work over the years to provide resource guides for students. There's something called the Quick Guide that's especially geared towards students who are new. And when the semester starts, there's also a student resource guide that our team has worked on with the Student Resource Center. So what those teams have been doing in partnership with us is looking at how we can look at consolidating with an eye towards just clearly listing the physical locations, because the Quick Guide does list the physical locations. Some of the other pieces don't. And we're just trying to kind of sync all that up. Also sync it with the catalog that our team helps produce and sync it up with the website. So just some pieces that were already in conversation, work that already happens to sync materials, but this kind of provided an impetus for further discussion and moving in that direction.
Thank you. Next slide. So this slide is their feedback really about process. So this is them coming through and saying, we attempted to register, like become a student, and here's what we're telling you. And so essentially on your first bullet, you see eliminate unnecessary steps, and they're basically the same number of that sub bullet there. Remove the app fee, communicate transcript requirement, provide student ID immediately, provide acceptance immediately, and communicate with students continuously. Pretty good feedback. You would think, okay, some of you, well, we go to college, shouldn't we have all this dialed in? Not exactly. And I think there are things that we put in place in the past that we thought that were extremely important. So if you look below, actions taken, one of the things that we're right in the midst of, you see March 2025 target, is that we're indicating that the official high school transcript requirement in the admissions process is not going to be part of that process. Now students still should graduate from high school, and we still like the transcript as a part of a review process, but it's down the pipeline. What had been really going on significantly is it was stuck in the admissions pipeline. And if you don't have the official, they got stuck, and they got stuck, and they got stuck. And for a lot of students, it's not very easy to always get that official transcript. They don't know where it is. They don't know what it is half the time. So it just moves it further down. It becomes kind of an academic requirement, right? You do see transcripts may be used later in the process, okay? To be clear, we do indicate up here, and I think this has come up for this board before, about application fees. So you do see that we're currently in the process of looking at the app fee. I want to be careful. It does say our app fee is still in place to prevent. Nothing really prevents a fake app. I mean, they can get around it. It's still $2, but it is the deterrent we currently have that ensures that if you've experienced what I did at other colleges, you get a flood in some cases of like 10, 20,000 applications coming in at once that were fake. And then we have to determine the validity of them, right? So we're currently working on something as an ID verification process, though, that may assist us to then still remove the app fee. But we want to make sure we have that other piece in place. Okay. Next slide.
So this next one is around financial aid and specific to the website. So just some basics about making sure there's good contact information, program and tuition fees on the individual program pages, and then connecting to a trend that EAB had seen, just making sure students know about fake FAFSA websites, where they could be pulled into giving sensitive information that they shouldn't be. So we, again, kind of in sync with looking at redoing a lot of the most prominent pages on the web. We have a redesigned cost scholarships and aid page, which is the parent page to financial aid, because we don't want students to always see financial aid in isolation, right? What are all the pieces of paying for college? So that parent page has been redesigned, and the financial aid page was redesigned in accordance with what the recommendations were. And then we've been working with the bookstore, with the student accounts, curriculum and others on program specific costs on all 180 pages. All 180 program pages on the website. So that's something that we're targeting to have in summer. I'll just, without delving into too much detail, the state updates its tuition in mid-March. And so while we're normally touching all of the pages in March, we don't necessarily have that tuition piece yet, and that's a critical piece to this. So that's why I'm saying I wish it were sooner, but summer's our target because it's going to have to be a second pass on those pages based on when the state sets tuition, because we have all the pages get updated every year in time for when registration starts in April. If there's a way, we'll make it happen, but it might take a little bit longer because it's based on when the state sets tuition.
Thank you. On to our next slide. Here we go. This one's fairly simple, but it is important, and it's in particular about financial aid services, and the recommendations is privacy of space. In the past, this college had made some decisions. I'm not sure if anyone ever visited the first floor of the S building where we have our entry. And prior to coming, we made some design solutions that put the predominant amount of processing all in one very large space. And if you're not if you're an employee, you're there. If you're not an employee, you never see it. And so what was on the floor, though, was staff would have to come out necessarily or have an interaction online. So in particular, we did some redesign so that every single office that's available on that floor is available with and staffed by a unit or an area. So registered, I'm saying something that you all might think would be expected. It's a scholarship person, there's a financial aid person, a registration person, an advising person, and they're rotating in and out of the back. In particular, this one was, you need to have a private space for people to discuss their financial matters. And so that is now part of that whole process. So every student has the opportunity to do that and to do so as well at the regional campuses. We provided that as well. Our next slide is improving registration process by proactively providing students explicit instruction on how to navigate course scheduling and registration. This is interesting, one of which I go back to in loco parentis, which is, it still emerges from, I think, the 1960s and 70s philosophy that the student will show up and they will be fully formed and know how to do everything, and you just guide them to the spot and they'll do it. Our students are from varied and all kinds of means of which we should not assume anything of them, right? And so guiding people to the action that we need them to take is extremely important. So we're moving in that direction. If students can do it on their own, that's fantastic. We have resources and services. If you need it in person, we're providing that. But in particular, course scheduling and registration, as you can imagine, Tony was commenting about putting the apply button on every page, right? And some of you might have gone in to try to register. Maybe you should do that. The navigation to figure out all the steps to register is not always as clear as we think it is. So that guidance is extremely important and eliminates frustration for people as well. The other actions taken, you see below, is our new communication plan for admissions, comments about the steps that you'll take, like when you're admitted, what does that mean? What's the transcript requirement? What are the next steps you're supposed to take? And also who you're supposed to talk to, and the invitation, bullet 2, that we're inviting you into express enrollment events. And this is a shift for us in that I think in the past, we've been quite a bit more passive, I think, with registration, which is it's available online. And there are kiosks if you come in, and we direct them to the kiosks. This express enrollment event is a significant lift of up to 6,000 seats that are available for as we communicate out with our MPS or any partner who says, I'm interested in coming. We are reserving a seat for you. This begins in March all the way through to the start of the semester in August, where we invite you through and guide you through those steps. We'll do them out in the community at our high schools and CBOs. We'll do them here on campus. And again, it's that very, to some extent, stepwise progression all the way from you're interested, let's look at your app. Oh, let's now look at your registration schedule. And let's even look at a pre-packaged set of courses that might help you and get you registered before you leave this space. So it's a very intentional and different approach. Next slide. So for awareness, as you saw, so we started with SSI and moved to EAB. In some cases, so SSI guided us, and some of those outcomes, if you saw where we were strong or even where we needed to work, some of the actions being taken by EAB also cover these same things, right? So improving the website, improving our registration steps were some of the feedback we're hearing that came out of SSI, like improve your advising capacity, improve your communication strategies so they overlap. So the presentation together covers them. In some cases, they don't. In particular, one of the pieces that we want to make sure you do is when you run a survey, you want to get follow-up. So we're going to be running some focus group town hall interviews with students facilitated by Institute of Research students. I believe Dr. Cruz is there. His name kept showing up on the slide. So, okay, there we go. And he's going to be there. Number two, we're just trying to continue to integrate the feedback from from these entities into our current practice. And hopefully as we look forward then into our strategic plan, like how does this shape the work we're doing for the future as guides? And then finally, you're seeing for us, and again, some might say we should have been on this and not say no one was, but with intention, what is our customer service orientation? What does it really mean that we say when you walk in or when you encounter an MATC employee, whether it's in person, online in Zoom, in email, what is an approach that we should be taking that engages our customer, our student in a way that really says we're here to help you. Now, I believe our staff really are engaged in that, but we also do get lost in sometimes our day-to-day, the work that confronts us. And sometimes there is a lot of stress in the work environment where we're in a downtown location, you deal with a lot of other things coming in and out your door. And so, but we're engaging in that process. We're going through all kinds of training. That training has hit in the past semester how to manage classroom disruptions better, but also in particular for the staff, scenario-based opportunities to engage with training around how do I engage. And in particular, when I'm very stressed and I know I'm faced with a difficult conversation, how do I still navigate to a positive one? So we're focused on that as we approach our MATC team day on March 19th. So that's where we are with feedback and some of our actions we're currently taking. And I'm not sure if you have any.
Any questions?
Well, just first I want to say, I'm glad that you're doing this. It's really good to see it through the lens of people who are experiencing our systems. And as someone who, when I went to college, didn't know a thing about college and didn't have any adult support and walked into the nearest one, I looked up university in the phone book, walked into the nearest one to my house and said, how do I apply? And I remember them asking, are you going for your master's or bachelor's? And I said, yes, because I didn't know the difference. And so those kinds of systems are so important for helping navigate that. My question is just so simple. Like, I don't know what EAB and SSI are here. Can you tell us what they are?
Sure. All the way back to the beginning, SSI is Student Success Inventory.
Okay.
And then EAB, I was told, used to be the Education Advisory Board, but that's the acronym, but they go by EAB now. So they just say that's our name. And they are an entity that 25 years ago was really primarily a research think tank out of Washington. And they provided research-based reports and summaries to colleges around something like this. And they have completely reframed their work environment. They do technology supports, they do all kinds of, they'll come and do what they did for us, which is an assessment of service.
So we contract with them and then they come in, or is it a service that they provide for free?
Well, we are currently working with EAB because we use the Navigate product.
Okay.
And so they are in support of us as we use that. We do trainings with them, and then we do to some extent participate in some of their national events as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any questions online?
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. So in EAB feedback in action, recommendation 3, we talked about specifically providing acceptance immediately. Let me know if I have this right. So someone applies to the school, they're accepted, and isn't there like a pending transcript notification that they get? Or are they informed that there's some more work that they need to do to make sure those transcripts are in?
Perfect. I mean, it's a fantastic question, right? You're right at the crux of the problem we have. In the current process, because the official transcripts required, they get a notification that indicates your application is incomplete. It will not be complete until you finalize and submit your formal, your official transcript, and then they're in limbo. So that sits. And so we have to be very proactive to ping them about, constant reminders of this is still needed, this is still needed, this is still needed. The new process, when it says formally accept quickly, right, which would it indicates most likely that you're going to need a transcript, but it isn't required. So you can click submit. It indicates you've been accepted. Congratulations. And then it says there are additional follow-ups. But it does say you're admitted, and now take the next step, which is if you chose this program, here's your program, contact these entities. And then we're also supposed to be team instead of years over here, outreach. And these then become the academic units, the advisors, the retention coaches reaching out to say, you're still missing these documents, right? But they have a formal acceptance, which is different than what we've been doing as we move through this process in March.
And will it give someone the spark that they need to get those in more quickly, or will they say, oh, I did everything, I was accepted, I don't need to do more?
You use the word spark. I think it's interesting because we've done signing days, have we not here? Yeah. So I think it's a good word, because I think there's something very legitimate about being accepted. So that the fact that it says something about you were accepted to a school, a college, means something to a student, does to a lot of people. To your other question, which is actually more important, which is there still is follow-up for them to do, right? But I think, again, part of the actions we have to take, there's kind of an orientation here that we have to undertake, which is different perhaps than we've done before. We're busy, the staff are busy, they're always busy. I do think we have to be much more progressive in our outreach. And one of the things that comes up, for example, is phone calling. And people will say, oh, wait, I made a phone call, no one was there, and they stop. Part of phone call behavior is you keep calling, and eventually you do reach a student or they come back to you. But the persistence is what will engage our student more, and I think is our responsibility for students who said they're interested, right? So we want to engage. And in some cases, I think some of our students do fill out an application as part of MPS process, and they're asked to do so as something perfunctory. So they may not necessarily have an interest in coming to MATC. But when you get them on the phone, they finally tell us that, then we can mark that as an indicator saying they're not interested, and we stop the process.
And sometimes the transcripts is not necessarily a student thing, it's a systems thing, where I'm a student in MPS.
Yeah.
My transcript is from central office.
Yeah.
And so either there's a disconnect between me and central office, or I owe some fees for gym class or something. I didn't buy a swim cap and it's still on my record, and they won't release my transcripts or whatever it might be. So how are we able to assist the student in that system process rather than it just being the
If I can, I think one of the ways that we're able to do that, particularly and specific to Milwaukee Public Schools as the single largest source of our students, is with our MQ partnership. And so if you heard in Dr. Cruz's remarks, right, this past year was the first year of Milwaukee Direct Admit. And we had, I think it was 900 juniors fill out this very simple, it's literally 2 minutes. Like we've watched people do it. And then the transcripts come to us in bulk from MPS, right? And the logic there is MPS has all this information that we would need anyway. Why are we making the students go ask the school to send it to us on an individual basis, even if it's electronic, because it is, but it's still like an individual action instead of, and that's somewhat common around the country in terms of large K-12 districts and community colleges. So to me, that's a big step on the transcript piece, is when you have a direct admissions partnership like that, then we can get all of the information in bulk from the K-12 district with the approval of the parent or the student if they're 18.
Again, at the end is that we have to be much more proactive, and like Dr. Ting was saying, much more proactive on all ends of this to get students through the whole process, right? And it's like in the past, we've done a great job of getting students to apply. Things get in the way. Obviously, the application is one of them, and then not being as proactive as we should be. And so being proactive is if that student's having that issue, like that student may have that issue, like that's an opportunity for us. If we can get in touch with the student and talk to them, then how can we get in touch with the school? How can we get in touch with whoever it needs to be in order to facilitate that issue, that resolution for the student? It's not about just letting students come whenever they want. It's like we have to be much more, and we are going to be, because the way that we're setting it up, much more proactive in the way that our advisors, our retention coaches are working with those students.
Okay.
I was gonna say.
It's a philosophy.
I s- I still get regular, like, at least once a month, student asking me, how do I get my transcripts? How do I get my transcripts? So it takes away that huge part, but I think also the judgment piece, when students apply and then they get a message that says, when we get your transcripts, then you might be in, there's this fear, well, they're gonna see my grades, they're not gonna let me in, not recognizing that that's not gonna be a barrier here, I think. So taking away that and then being accepted is going to make so many more students go through the process just for that, just for that.
I have one quick question. I think I asked this before, but sorry, I can't remember whether or not this was answered. What about returning students that have already graduated and want to come back for a class or two? Do they still require their transcripts? I think I made that question before.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think that where we are with transcript, right, is that the requirement is much softer, right?
If I
So
not graduated from METC, let's say they went to UWM.
Yeah.
And they just want to take a course or something.
if they've been here previously before.
They have not.
Not, okay. So then what we're asking for, again, you put in an application and you indicate, it's like you're anybody else, right? You don't have the transcript, it's fine, you get admitted. And then it indicates, I would assume, graduated from bachelor's. It's not really pertinent. It's a matter of what do you want to take, right? And then we respond to them. And then in this other part, when we use the word Dr. Cruz just said, the proactive engagement with the student then becomes, tell me more about why you're here. Right?
But those particular students wouldn't need a high school transcript, right?
They don't. Well, not necessarily, no, because they already have evidence most likely of having
Right.
completed something above and beyond high school, right? So they wouldn't need that. Again, too, when we think about this, we haven't presented age, students from all ages apply. Students will wait. And I have a lot of friends that have done this where they have somebody in their family that applied and went to school at 44. And they might say, well, I'm sure there's a transcript back there. I have no idea where it is, right? Or I don't know how to get it. I don't know where my school is. And our answer is, we can still help you with that. We have a way for you to get in, and we have a conversation we can have with you, that if you don't have this, we have a way to still help you through the process.
Okay. Thank you.
I really love this great conversation, like the work around it. And I love that we can bypass sort of this individual responsibility to have to go dig through a system for transcripts. Can we do that? Do we do that with other systems than MPS? I mean, can we do it with West Allis and Cudahy and?
So we've started some conversations about using the same direct admissions model. We've got one suburban school district and one charter school that have expressed interest, and we're actually having conversations with them right now about basically taking the same model and bringing it to them. And I think as we look, into the future, I think that is something we'll want to grow.
But let me just clarify. So, but if we don't have the direct admissions process with West Allis, but a student comes, can we just contact West Allis for the school district? Yeah, for their transcript, or the student still has to do that?
I don't want to speak outside of my expertise. I will say that my general understanding is that, and sometimes it can be for legal reasons, that the student has to request it because, so for example, in the direct admit partnership, when the city attorney on MPS's behalf reviewed the situation, they felt as though parents or students who are of age had to opt in. It couldn't be an opt-out program because there has to be an affirmative permission given by the student or the parent to the school district to release the information to the college.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I know that there are some degrees, like if somebody has a bachelor and they want to come here to do paralegal studies, they come to do that. Is there a list that I can go somewhere if I'm a post-baccalaureate person, I want to do a specific program here at MATC that I can find that information at? Is it a specific area?
I don't think we've organized it in a way around post-bac. not that I can think of. I will say, and you make me reflect on the fact that I did the same thing back at my home institution, and the baccalaureate institutions were mad at us. So, because they basically said, why you're running a program that we should be, they wanted the students to come to them. So I don't think we're organized that way, but it's actually that's a good comment. Because there are a number of programs that I think people made, they're nice add-ons to their bachelor's degrees, right? And so I don't think we frame it that way though.
I think
From a
the
marketing perspective, do it.
I think the badges, which we're kind of on the cusp of being able to do a little bit more outward push, is probably going to be one of our better opportunities, because we're nearing the place where the synergy of having a badge specific application and information about all the badges on the web. I think that to me is where I see the biggest opportunity, because I have a 2-year or a 4-year marketing degree. I graduated in 1995. I need a digital marketing badge. That's I think a way forward for us into that market, and we're on the cusp of it.
Right, because I the reason I asked that question is when it comes to employment opportunities, there are people who I need a little bit more training, I need a little bit more education so I can get that next level of whatever it is on my job. And they don't want to go to a Marquette or UWM where they have to spend a lot more money when they can come to a place like MATC and get comparable training for far less and still be in that next bracket of whatever they're doing.
I think that's a marketing thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the sense of web, the way that we configure our offerings.
Correct.
In the sense of like saying, if you're coming, I don't know, somebody returning, somebody, I don't know what the title would be, but that somebody would land on a page and say, click, and then there would be, again, it would be our 180 programs, but maybe a selection of those programs that may fit more with what somebody.
Yep, absolutely. And I really do think the badges are going to be our best opportunity for that, because of how they're configured. And it's a different market segment for us. And I was just in a couple of meetings about it today. So it's very much on our radar.
That's all I have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to new business. Do we have any new business? All right. So future events, we've got our next regularly scheduled board meeting at March 25th, on March 25th. And then do I have a motion for a closed session?
Oh, sorry.
I move that the district board convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.851G of the Wisconsin statutes to discuss item 11A litigation strategy and items 11B litigation update. The board might reconvene into open session to take action on matters discussed in the closed session under items 11A and 11B if necessary.
A second.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call vote?
Director Medina Ramos.
Aye.
Director Marlon.
Aye.
Director Najib.
Aye.
Director Owen Moore.
Aye.
Director Pence.
Aye.
Director Baker.
Aye.
Director Burris.
Aye.
Director Foley.
Aye.
Director Case.
Aye. All right, the board will convene into closed session. We want to take
5 minutes?
Yes, I was gonna say, do we want to take 5 minutes?
Hey, Mark, is your volume all the way up, or is there a microphone that you can get closer to?
Good, how are you?
My volume is at 100%, and I'm just right in front of my laptop. I have no way of improving the volume